Hi everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Today we're going to have a presentation by Komal Kapoor, who is an advocate who works to destigmatize mental health. Just a quick introduction before we start off. Komal Kapoor is a recent graduate from the Christian Medical College, Vellore, in an allied health science degree course. She is currently working as a paramedic professional in the same hospital. She is also a country representative for HIFA, Healthcare Information for All, which is an international community platform of medical professionals from across the world. She is involved with several international organizations and initiatives, mainly advocating about mental health issues and other relevant healthcare issues. Her main focus involves research in neuropsychology and mental health. Thank you so much for being here, Komal, and over to you.
Okay, so hello everyone. So I'm Komal Kapoor and I'm currently working as a paramedical professional in Christian Medical College, Vellore, India. I have been lately a COVID frontline healthcare worker too, considering the current scenario. So a little bit about my background, just to have more clarity. I don't have my majors in neuropsychology or any kind of mental disorders yet. My main interest in the field stems from the fact that I have had my own share of struggles with some mental health issues. And also from the fact that I am a healthcare worker and I have been exposed to a wide range of patients and people. I work in a tertiary care hospital and I've been exposed to critical care areas. And one thing which I've always been observing, being a healthcare worker, that mental health is the most overlooked and most ignored part arena of healthcare. I don't think people talk about it enough, but every other person, whether you are dealing with some physical ailment or not, every 1 in 3 people actually do suffer silently with some or the other mental illness. And that's the reason that ignites this drive within me. And I'm also soon going to pursue my master's, preferably in the field of mental health. So yeah, without wasting any time, we'll just dive in the presentation. It's going to be a very basic one. I'm sorry. It's going to be a very basic one, and but it will talk about the advocacy part of mental health. Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Okay. So mental health, as we all know, like I'll just start with the basic concept like the brain. We all know that brain is an organ that controls the whole body, whether it's your voluntary or involuntary movements, whether it's your emotions, whether it's some chemical imbalance or balance, etc. Everything. But still, we do not give that much importance in maintaining the brain health as we give to maintaining the physical ailments in the body. For example, if you're having a fever, you would definitely go to a physician to know the cause and to get a medicine. But I think you all will agree with me that we are not so much considerate about the fact if we are not feeling well lately, like emotionally and mentally, if we are suffering through some stress or burnout, which is very common in today's scenario, especially considering the pandemic situation. So why is this indifference? Like, according to my understanding, and also a lot of evidence-based data, which I'll be mentioning in my presentation further, mental health and physical well-being is interconnected. And if you're not maintaining a proper mental health, you are definitely going to see some serious side effects on your physical well-being as well. Also, the fact that it is so much stigmatized to talk about mental health or having a mental ailment, it's very important, and it's the need of the hour that we all stand up and be more aware and more literate that how and why mental health is so important. So this is just a part of an abstract that I've taken from a systematic review. It is talking about the correlation and the impact of the physical activities and a sedentary lifestyle on the children and adolescents, and the occurrence of depression among them, mainly in children and adolescents. I just want to give you all like a review that what the evidence says. So as you can see, several longitudinal studies demonstrated that experiencing depression in early associated with wide range of negative outcomes. I'm sorry. Yeah. Depression is the second leading cause for disability, and people are just suffering through it like silently. It is very important, as per the study, to identify modifiable factors that could prevent or alleviate the depressive symptoms among children and adolescents. They have suggested high levels of physical activity, low levels of sedentary behavior, and sufficient sleep for a better maintenance of mental health. Also, they have told about that depressive symptoms represented their primary outcome. It includes this anxiety and other kind of suicidal behaviors and aggression in the growing children and adolescents. So I've just put up this here in the very beginning just to give you all some idea about what we are going to see ahead in the presentation and what all the scientific evidence has to say about something like depression, which is like a large part of poor mental health. So moving ahead. First of all, like what is mental health? It's very important to understand what do you mean by mental health. So as per the definition, mental health can be defined as the absence of any mental disease or a state of being that includes the biological, psychological, social factors which contribute to an individual's mental state. As per WHO, it includes one's potential, the ability to cope with normal life stresses, and also the contributions as core components of mental health. There is one more definition that says that correlates the intellectual, emotional, and spiritual developments beyond this, and the positive self-perception, feelings of self-worth, physical health, intrapersonal harmony. So basically, all these definitions that exist in the databases, it just says that mental health is not just one thing. It comprises many, like a large foray of areas. It is about the emotional harmony, it is about the intrapersonal harmony, it is about the intellectual perception, it is about self-worth, it is about physical ailments, and so much more. So it just emphasizes on the fact that how important it is to maintain a good mental health, and how important it is to seek help if you are facing some or the other kind of mental issue. So this is just like the synonyms that will come into your head if you think of mental health: therapy, support, stress, depression, psychological imbalance, and whatnot. I've just put this up to stimulate some kind of reactions within you all. So why is it important to talk about mental health? Again, as I told you about the stigma that is attached with the topic of mental health and mental ailments. So as I've taken this from an article, it's like there's a certain type of fear when the topic comes up. It's almost like we are afraid of being labeled, of being called crazy or mad or something like that. Just like our physical health, mental health is a crucial part of our daily lives that deserves our undivided attention. The type of information we consume, whom we associate ourselves with, our current circumstances, the behaviors we tolerate, all that plays an important role how we feel about ourselves and how we approach life. Like life is tough, we cannot deny the fact. And especially in today's scenario, no matter whatever field you are in, I'm a healthcare worker, and I can definitely relate to this fact that even in a hospital setup, I can actually say that mental health is not being given that much importance, that how much it is supposed to be given. And I have seen my colleagues literally struggling with so many issues silently, and still not having the guts to just step ahead and seek help. A lot of people are not even having, being the healthcare workers, they are not even having the you can say, they are not having that much awareness that okay, they are like suffering through some issue and they need help. So it's very, very important that people need to step up and they need to destigmatize mental health, because it is as normal as any other physical ailment, and it is more important in my opinion. Okay, so these are some reasons why you should take care of your mental health and how it will help you. So these are some points that I've listed. It will help you in reduction of anxiety. With anxiety, I do not mean like the generalized anxiety disorder or like a mental ailment. It can be like day-to-day life related anxiety. It can be anticipation anxiety, which we all would have felt in our day-to-day life, regardless of the fact if you are diagnosed with anxiety disorder. So yeah, if you're taking care of your mental health and if you are just concentrating, okay, this is something I need to preserve, then you will definitely have these many benefits. You'll have improved moods, you'll have a clearer thinking, there won't be brain fog, there'll be a greater sense of calm or inner peace, which is very important in today's pandemic scenario, especially, and the hustle culture that we live in. Increased self-esteem, reduced risk of depression, improvements in relationships, sharper memory, clarity in thinking, higher self-esteem, better sleep, increased energy, stronger resilience, and also increased BDNF, which is a neurotrophin, and which plays a very important role in our brain connections. So yeah, all that will be in their best capacity if you are maintaining your mental health. So again, scientific evidence shows that mental health issues can decrease the quality of life, the how you living your life. Somebody who is suffering through a poor mental health, like depression for that matter, uh, that person will not be that much active in their day-to-day activities. That person might be just lying on their bed every day. They wouldn't even have the motivation to get out of their bed and to do day-to-day basic activities like brushing your teeth or taking bath or cleaning up your space or anything of that sort that you can think of. And slowly it is just gonna impact your physical well-being as well, which I'm going to cover forward in the presentation. It also can increase the risk of your communicable and non-communicable diseases, because I think you all must be aware of the fact that having a poor mental health or having these kind of untreated mental ailments like for a very long time makes your immune system weaker, and you are more susceptible to acquire any kind of communicable or non-communicable diseases. The all kind of viruses, bacteria, they are just bombard you with a lot of diseases. And having a strong immune system is very important, and it is in a way correlated to having a calmer brain. Also, it will poor mental health will contribute to both unintentional and intentional injury. With unintentional intentional injury, you can like it has it can be taken in various aspects, like somebody who's not keeping like feeling well lately might be suffering through anger issues or irritability. The injury can be like how you are behaving with others or how you're behaving too. Like a lot of studies have proven actually a lot of people who are not keeping sane for the time being are not able to communicate well, and also they also get uh, trapped in self-harming behaviors. A lot of them tend to become suicidal. They have self-worth issues. So you can take that in that aspect. Then there's lower educational achievements. Of course, your concentration, there'll be so much brain fog if you're not feeling calm, and if you're suffering to depression or anxiety or stress for that matter, which is very common now. Also, you will be tend to be more inclined towards substance abuse, because of course, like if we talk about smoking, like which is very common, if you ask anybody random out there who is a chronic smoker, they would probably tell you that they started it out of stress because as we all know, like cigarette has nicotine, and nicotine induces the release of dopamine in our brains, which causes you pleasure. So a lot of people, like when they're stressed out, they'll be like prone to smoke, and of course nicotine gets absorbed in the bloodstream, that I do not have to tell. And it eventually, when the level goes down, it the craving increases and it makes you addictive. Same goes for any other kind of substances, marijuana or something, to name few. Then there's violence, of course, because if you are not mentally calm, you are having anger issues, irritability. Obviously, you'll tend to be more rude. Your behavior would be affected. Your behavior towards others would be affected. So this is something very general. So as you can see, mental illness is one of the main causes of unhappiness in the world, and it is based on a study. It produces nearly as much of the misery that exists as poverty does, and more than is caused by physical illness. And this is the truth. On average, they reduce national income by 5% through unemployment, absenteeism, lower productivity, and extra physical care cost. So I think these reasons are important enough to consider if you are talking about mental health, because it is affecting your life in that respect. So does stress come under mental health? I know it's a very obvious question, but how? So again, it is from evidence base. The benefits of intentionally practicing to improve mental health are a response to the chronic stress reported at epidemic levels around the world. As I was mentioning about somebody who has just initiated smoking, a lot of them, because they want to reduce their stress and they are so much addicted to the response that they get after consuming any kind of substance, for example, cigarettes, the nicotine induces the dopamine production. So this study has kind of tried to say that exactly. Chronic stress has been proven to deteriorate the hippocampus. So the stress also leads to decreased concentration and memory, confusion, loss of sense of humor, anger, irritability, and fear. And of course, stress is not good for your brain. So if we are adapting good mental health practices like mindfulness or a few, which I'll be talking about later, we can definitely keep stress at bay, the day-to-day stress at bay, and we can definitely hold on to that. So is mental health and mental illness like the same thing? So as you can see, like you can actually say they are kind of related, but not everybody who is having like an improper mental health currently, it's not always necessary that the person would be having some kind of serious or medically diagnosable mental ailment as well. Like you can see the names on the slide. So, but again, it is very much correlated, but it's not the same. And you can just see what it says. The term mental health implies the absence of any illness. And a lot of ways can be mentally healthy or ill, just like there are many ways who can be physically unwell. Like how there's a difference between being physical, like the physical health and physical ailment. There is a slight difference between mental health and mental ailment. But again, like they all come under the same broad topic, that is mental health. So factors affecting the mental health, it can be biological factors, such as it can be inherited genes or some brain chemical imbalances. It can be due to life experiences such as trauma or some kind of abuse. A lot of people have PTSD, post-traumatic disorders. A lot of people have phobias. Like I am personally somebody who is phobic of an insect, and I can actually go back to my childhood, and there has been an incident which has kind of instilled that phobia within me. So yeah, that is something that can cause this thing. Then it's the lifestyle choices, such as the level of physical activity, the food you eat. So if you are having a sedentary lifestyle, if you are not following a proper routine, if you are consuming all kind of bad food, as they say. So obviously you won't be feeling mentally sane, or like you won't be having a good mental health in the long run. And then of course the family history of mental health problems, which is also a lot of times a very strong cause. People wouldn't be even knowing that why they are dealing with this kind of mental health issue, but sometimes it runs in the family. So for a lot of diseases, that also can be a reason. So this is just a chart that is just telling, like, if you're not maintaining a proper mental health, what will happen. So one or more of 6 functions will be disrupted: the thinking, perception, emotion, signaling, physical, and behavior. So a fun fact, like amygdala is the brain part which is responsible for processing emotions, positive as well as negative. So a lot of times when we say the imbalances in the brain, a lot of times actually amygdala is the part that is affected. And yeah, so the focus has to be that. So it's just a fun fact that I mentioned. So signs and symptoms of poor and deteriorating mental health to watch out for. So one is disrupted sleep. Poor sleep could be, or frequent oversleeping could be a big sign for having some kind of mental health issue and something not being right. Because of course, like whether you are oversleeping or you are not sleeping properly, you will feel fatigued, you will feel the burnout. So you won't be able to carry on the ahead day with that much focus and brain clarity. So disrupted sleep is one common sign that we need to watch out for of mental health issue. Then there is irritability or being more emotional than usual. Like a lot of people you would have seen, they easily break down, or they'll experience irritation, anger, or they'll just feel snappy, and they'll be easily frustrated for no reason. So they'll be having just mood swings. A lot of times it's due to some hormonal problems or something like that. But again, it's all interconnected, and it is all giving you a poor mental health. It is all working combinedly, and it is actually affecting your mental health in the long term, which means that you are not feeling well, you are not uh, mentally sane currently, and you need help. Then there's loss of joy. It's normal to have a bad day every and now and then, but life is bound to bring you some sadness at some point of time, which is very true. So if routinely you find less happiness and enjoyment in activities that you actually used to really, really enjoy at one point of time, then there's definitely something wrong within you, and you definitely need to seek help. Then there's change in appetite. I have personally faced this. Like if I'm having a bad day, actually my appetite is the first thing that gets affected. So if you notice that you're overeating or undereating, then obviously you'll be having dramatic changes in your weight over a short period of time. So this is one thing that is actually affecting your your physical health. It will cause fluctuations in your weight, and it is like you would have heard like conditions like bulimia. I know it's like a mental ailment, but again, like the people who are having bulimia, they have the tendency to eat a lot because it gives them like pleasure, and then they'll be like binge eating, and then they'll be just forcing it out from their body because they'll be concerned about their weight gains. Like if I have to mention a famous celebrity who has spoken about this, it's Princess Diana. She was somebody who has spoken very boldly about it, how she used to binge eat and how it was like comfort for her, and how she used to try to like induce vomit it out. So yeah, bulimia is one ailment that you can develop if you are not having a sound mental health. Sorry. Worsening physical symptoms. So depression and anxiety can bring on physical side effects, including rapid heart rate, dizziness. As we know, fight and flight response, sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system works together. If you're having some anxiety attack or bouts of anxiety, all these things work together to give you like a momentarily relief, but in the long term, it is actually negatively impacting your physical health. So yeah, this is one thing, and this is one physical impact that you see if you're not having and maintaining a good mental health. Then it is like low energy. Like you wouldn't be even knowing like the cause of this lethargy that you'll be facing each day. Feelings of fatigue and lethargy are very common, and you'll be just feeling sluggish and it's harder to concentrate. You just want to avoid any kind of conversations or any kind of encounters with people. It's difficult. You just feel a natural loss of energy, and you don't have any proper medical reason for that. So definitely you are low on your mental health today. So again, like we have already entered the impact of mental health on the physical well-being. But again, as I said at the beginning itself, like brain controls the entire body, right? So hence there's definitely a direct relation between physical and mental health. So if you're not having a good mental health, you cannot expect to have a proper well-being, like physical well-being. And also it's like inversely true as well. Not inversely, sorry, reversely true as well. So yeah. So you might be wondering, how does my like a mental health affect the physical health? So here are some reasons that you might not have considered, or a lot of people miss out on, even the doctors, I would say. It's like neglecting your mental health can lead to some serious health issues. Like I'm talking about like neglecting your mental health, like some mental health ailment or issues, like for a long time, if they go untreated, this is something might happen. Like you can develop some heart disease, you can even develop high blood pressure, you can have a weakened immune system that we already spoke about. You can have asthma, like for some people that is a possibility, like for schizophrenia patients, like if they are having, like if they're smoking too much, they can actually, everybody can develop if you're smoking then. So then there's obesity, of course, the weight fluctuation part that we spoke about. Then you will have gastronomical problems, premature death, of course. If you're having all these problems, definitely you're going to die early. Gastronomical problems, I think you all would have faced, at least I am somebody who is living with anxiety. I tend to get anxiety from time to time. And I think gastronomical part is very much something which I can relate to, because you might be eating well the full day, but if you are having some kind of stress or you're having anxiety for something, you'll just feel an urge to, to just run to the loo, and you wouldn't be having any reason for that. So anxiety actually induces gastronomical problems. It induces more acid production in your stomach, and it's all scientifically proved. Depression alone can cause chronic fatigue, insomnia, and increased sensitivity to aches and pains due to abnormal function of the neurotransmitters in the brain. So here you can see for yourself that how mental health can have some serious repercussions on the physical health as well if it is left untreated. So as per the American Heart Association, stress-induced cardiomyopathy is the most overt example. I'm just trying to tell you like how stress or some kind of mental health problem can cause some kind of cardiac issue. So as per the American Heart Association, they have actually shown a correlation between these two factors. So you can see like the data suggests a broader long-term relationship whereby the psychological health of a person's mind positively or negatively affect the cardiovascular health. And it also increases the risk for the CVD events and cardiovascular prognosis over time. Research has now clearly demonstrated that negative psychological personality traits and mental health disorders can actually affect the cardiovascular regions. Although many of these studies have considered the CVD risk in relation to the negative emotions, numerous investigators have pointed to overlap these kind of things. But ultimately, the end point is that in the long term, if your mental health is not sound, it can affect your, it can make you develop some kind of cardiac problems, or cardiomyopathy is like stress-induced cardiomyopathy is a real thing. And people a lot of times don't even like realize that. So yeah. Then I'm so sorry for the poor clarity. Here, this chart just shows like the all the associations that are there, like if you're having some negative psychological thing like stress, negative outlook, anxiety, it will in turn lead to reported associated behavioral and biological detrimental processes. It is based on a study. I've given the link, you can check it out. So as I was talking about, like somebody who's having this kind of poor mental health, it's very probable for that person to initiate smoking, to have physical inactivity. A lot of times we'll be seeing these kind of people in our day-to-day life and we'll just term them as lazy, but that's not the case. A lot of times it's not in their hands and they are not doing it on purpose. They are having some or the other issue and they are just not able to share it with somebody. It's just bottling up. So this is happening. So they will have all poor eating and overeating, weight gain, medical non-compliance, activation of hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, dysregulation of autonomic nervous system, inflammation. Inflammation is one thing which is like very much noticeable in day-to-day life. A lot of people, they'll be having, if they are doing some blood test and they'll be having like some diagnosable inflammation in their body for no apparent reason. So a lot of times it is due to stress or some kind of anxiety or depression or something like that. Then there's hypercoagulability, increased arterial stiffness, endothelial dysfunction, inducible myocardial ischemia. So these kind of changes, like as we can see in behavioral, psychosocial, and biological processes, and they have just shown like how you can work upon your cardiovascular health and how it's all related to having a poor mental health. So, yeah. Then just to elaborate more on how stress can affect the immune system, according to a 2002 study performed by a professor in Hopkins School of Medicine, we can just see they reported that even chronic depression may suppress an older person's immune systems. And they have actually proven this, that those with chronic mild depression weaker the, I'm so sorry, yeah, response and weaker the lymphocyte T cell response, mitogens, which model how the body react to the viruses and bacteria. That's what exactly I was talking about like some time before. So this is like an evidence-based fact that stress can actually weaken your immune system and which can make you susceptible to any kind of microorganism related diseases, which are like innumerable in number. And it can also make you more susceptible to the current COVID-19, because of course that is again an attack by virus. It's not like if somebody's having a very sound mental health, I'm not at all saying that they cannot acquire these kind of diseases. They can, of course, but your chances are more if you are always very stressed out, and if you're having chronic stress, then you are more susceptible to these kind of diseases, even if you're not having some immunocompromised condition. So this is something to watch out for. So this is a very good chart that is just showing like how, like what all organs, how they are affected by having like too much chronic stress. Like it is just like how we talk about the fight and flight response. Like it is a momentary pleasure that you get, but over the long term, if it keeps happening, it is going to compromise your like full organ systems. So as we can see, like heartburn is something that can happen, as we already spoke about. Then insomnia is a real thing. Then you will have weakened immune system, risk of heart attack, pounding heart, high blood pressure. And also like here we find another relationship, like you can have coronary artery disease, because if you are due to this activation of parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, if you are having the high blood pressure every now and then, so obviously your you might eventually develop some kidney disease, or you might eventually develop some kind of heart disease. Obviously your organs, the supply of blood to the vital organs will be affected, and ultimately you will end up getting some kind of serious or major issue which you never thought you might get. So then there's something to look out for is the fertility problems. So as we can see, the stress interferes with the reproductive system in both men and women, and it may make harder to conceive. Again, if you're having stress, it can cause like the release of cortisol can it can just interfere with your overall hormonal balance, and indirectly or directly it may make you infertile, and this can happen both in men and women. Also there's a relation like a lot of men and women like who are into smoking, like it has been according to a lot of studies, like in men, if they are chronic smokers, their sperm count would be less as compared to non-smokers. So again, there's a relation, like mostly a person smokes like to beat the stress because the feeling of dopamine in their brain. And again, this all stems from the fact that the life is so stressful and people are not able to adapt to it. So they'll just get involved in these kind of quick shortcuts. Then there's stomachache, as I said, overproduction of acid, low sex drive, erectile dysfunction. Now these are some things to watch out for again. There is missed periods. Again, that is a real thing. Even a condition like PCOD is to a certain extent stress induced, as they say. So then there's tense muscles. You will always feel like a tension in your, like a stiffness in your neck muscles, which can even be like misjudged to be some different kind of ailment. So yeah, all these are the repercussions that may happen of having a very stressed out routine and having a poor mental health for a long term. So if we look towards the modern world problems, of course, the addiction to phones and the laptops and the screen basically, or social media. So according to a systematic mapping study, like they have mainly focused on the youngsters, but I feel it is true for all age groups, because nowadays even like the elderlies are very much onto the social media and all. So they have shown a correlation between depression, anxiety, and the screen time. So as you can see, like most mental identified in this category could be linked to extensive use of social networks and living a digital life, because it disconnects them from the real life, and they just lose that time, and they are just comparing their lives to others. And basically I would just call it a toxic culture, which we all have kind of succumbed to, but it is indirectly actually like making you feel more worthless. It is actually causing a lot of addiction in many people, like they cannot even live, like they cannot even sleep without their phones next to them, and it is inducing a sense of loneliness. It is causing you loss of sleep, and also other kind of cyber related mental health problems. So I think this is definitely a modern world outlook and to something to watch out for, which has kind of aggravated the scenario, especially if we have to talk about today's scenario. The onset of pandemic has brought in a lot more mental health issues, because people were scared, people were like just dreaded by the uncertainty of the situation. They didn't know what to do. Lost so much media, so much information consumption through the media. They all were sitting, work from home became a real thing. So like this culture was more and more promoted there, and it is actually, if you're not, but I'm not saying you don't use internet or don't use social media, but there has to be a control on it, and there has to be a limited screen time. There has to be a me time, as they say. So yeah, as you can see, it is evidence based. So how can you preserve your mental health? So it's just about taking care of your mind. So here are some ways which I've mentioned. Exercising is very important, as you might have heard. Like if you're doing some kind of cardio exercise, it induces the release of endorphins, which make you feel good. They make you feel pleasant. So why not go for exercising than getting involved in consumption of some kind of substance or abusing a substance like cigarette or marijuana or something like that, which both the things are doing the same job, kind of, they are giving you pleasure, but still people opt for the latter than the former. I think exercising is a more pleasant way and is a more safer and like sustainable way to achieve that kind of pleasure hormones like the endorphins I was talking about, or dopamine for that matter. So it can actually ease depression and anxiety. So you can just check out on the internet, or you can just ask around. There are so many programs. Uh, Although yes, it is pandemic, you cannot hit out to gyms or outdoors that much frequently, but you can still do it in your homes. So why not involve in one and quit substance abuse? Then there's, of course, eat a healthy diets. Diets loaded with processed, high calorie and low nutrient foods have been linked with increased depression and anxiety, and of course, other kind of physical ailments like obesity and cholesterol and whatnot. So also avoid skipping meals, which can lead to fatigue and unhealthy snacking. A lot of these diet culture that is very much into picture nowadays, like the keto diet or some of the other diet. I'm not commenting on that because I have never tried any of those, like the intermittent fasting or something like that. It's good. It's good. But then there has to be a limit to everything. Especially, you should never starve your brain because your brain needs glucose to work and function properly. Especially in today's hustle culture, it's very important to feed your brain. When you're feeding yourself, you're not only feeding your body, you are also feeding your brain for proper functioning and feeling good. A lot of times, as per the studies and even my personal experiences, if you are not eating properly or if you're fasting or starving yourself, it gives you some headache, like chronic, it might be chronic headaches or intermittent headaches that have no apparent cause. So a lot of times it is due to the low glucose levels that because of which the brain is not getting enough glucose. So it's very important to not skip meals and eat a balanced diet, of course, eat good food, eat raw food, nuts, whole grains, fish, healthy fats, avocados into your meals. This will be helpful for the increased brain function. Then it's very important to maintain a normal sleep schedule, which is very hard in today's scenario. Like I personally am not able to maintain that as well, but I always try to do that. But it again has a repercussion. The recommendation for adults is like, as you can see, if you're having trouble falling asleep, then you can try some kind of relaxation techniques. Try not taking caffeine some hours before you hit your bed, and try sticking to a stricter schedule for bedtime. Like as they say, early to bed, early to rise makes a person healthy, wealthy, and wise. So it's very much true because if you are following that routine and you are just following that discipline to go to bed at a certain time and you are waking up early in the morning, actually a lot of studies have proven this. Those kind of people have a much better mental function and brain function in the long term. And that is a more sustainable way of living. Because ultimately, yes, in young age, the life and meetings and all that is their deadlines. I know this culture is very much in action, that people are not able to follow a proper night schedule or sleep schedule, and they are consuming too much caffeine. I myself do that, but it is ultimately like in a long term negatively impacting your mental health, and we cannot overlook that. Then there's very important, the most important part is get support. So here the support is like they are like it's not only about the social circle, but it is about the professional support as well. There are psychologists, there are therapists, there are psychiatrists, and they are just sitting, they are the like they are the specialists in that field, they are the experts in that field. But a lot of people, due to the fear of judgment or the stigma attached, because you will be termed as crazy or mentally unstable or something like that, a lot of people still don't have the guts to actually seek help, and they are just silently suffering each day, and uh, they are just giving way for so many other problems in their body or in their day-to-day life. Like those kind of people who are not able to ask for help, they are not having harmony within themselves, they are not having harmony like with others around them, and definitely this is not a life we all want. So there are specialists in the field who are not sitting there to judge you, and it's equally normal to have some kind of medicines if required. If you are having some diagnosed mental ailment, those medicines are completely safe, but they shouldn't be abused. That has to be taken care of. If you're doing it under the support, under the guidance of a medical health expert, then you'll definitely feel much better. So this is like the final words and some personal tips. As I told you, like I being a healthcare, medical, mental health advocate, I have myself have had some issues, and like these are few techniques that I have tried to follow and which have really worked for me and a lot of others. Like brain dumping is like something like how you're feeling. Like a lot of times in day-to-day life, a lot of emotions like make you feel very overwhelmed and you don't know how to control them. It's not necessarily some negative emotion, it can be something positive. It's just making you so much overwhelmed, it's just hindering you from even performing like the actual task. It is just making you overwhelmed. So either you can just speak to somebody and just put it out from your system, or you can use this technique, brain dumping. You can just write it on a paper, like what all emotions you're facing, negative, positive, whatever, and you'll actually feel little less and you'll feel little light. I have done this technique and it really works. So then there's mindfulness, of course, there's no doubt about that. Mindfulness technique, the meditation and all, it's very important. Meditation is not only about sitting like and just uttering some mantra or something like that, some chants. It's about focusing. It's about focusing on anything, just spending some time with yourself, just sitting for 10-15 minutes every day, and just focusing on your breath or some external noises will make you feel much better and much relaxed. Then maintaining a gratitude journal always helps. It, I think a lot of you would be following that. You should always be maintaining, if you'll be writing it and just reminding your brain that what are the things you are grateful for every day, it will actually like turn your negative emotions upside down. And I'm actually saying this after practicing it myself. Then you can see sorry, yeah, limiting digital time. Of course, that is very important, because too much on your phone and too much on social media, like mindless scrolling, which we all are doing every day, it's not, it is just, you know, killing the time. So it just kind of strains your eyes and your brain, and there's no more clarity. There are a lot of unnecessary thoughts and information that is being bombarded on you when you are always on social media or internet. So you should be using that time productively. Maybe you can read a book or something. At least try to keep your phone or the social media and whatever the screens like away from you, like for some hours before going to bed, because it definitely disrupts your sleep cycle. Then there are other techniques, as you can see. So yeah, these are some things from my personal diary. So thank you. Please connect to me on LinkedIn. I would love to connect with you all.
Thank you so much, Komal. That was a really great session, really insightful 50 minutes we had there. So if anyone has any questions, go ahead and unmute if you don't mind being recorded, or you can send them over using the chat box and I'll ask them. Meanwhile, would you mind telling us what inspired you to get into this field of advocacy? Was it a personal experience or what was it?
Yes, so as I was telling in my introduction, like the fact that I have had my own share of struggles with mental health issues, like anxiety is something that I have been dealing with since my childhood, I would say. I can still remember, like, just like I used to have so much anticipation anxiety just before writing some exam. Or I'm very fond of, I'm a dancer, like dancer as in I've learned classical dancing. So I have always loved to be on stage. But the anticipation anxiety when I'm standing backstage just about to perform on the stage, it still stays with me, but I try to overcome it. But I have been facing a lot of symptoms there, like there'll be induced coughing there. I don't know why. It will be just like if I'm going to sing on stage, I'm going to speak something, so I don't know, from out of nowhere I'll start coughing. It's just something like, okay, I need to clear my throat or something like that. So all these things, like when I was a child, I was having these issues, but at that time I didn't realize, because I didn't know, I didn't have awareness about it. Ki, okay, what exactly I'm dealing with. But right after getting into medical school, my exposure, and I got exposed to so many cases like that. I'm also working on a study which is like about not diagnosing exactly, but which is about observing like these kind of symptoms like mental health issues in chronic kidney disease patients. So like when you, especially when you are a healthcare worker, like you can see like there are patients, there are caregivers, and you can see the like how much of pain they are in, and how much negatively this their quality of life is impacted. And it is due to this reason, like it is like mental health diseases like depression and anxiety, I feel they go secondary to all these kind of ailments if you are a patient especially. And even in other fields, like I have my friends who will talk to me and they will be telling about their uh, the the unrealistic pressures they are facing at work, and like whether in this corporate field or any kind of culture for that matter. So all this has made me, you know, like instilled that, and my personal journey has instilled that drive within me, that I think I feel like it is the most overlooked arena of healthcare, and actually it is something which should be given the most attention to. So because it is directly linked to all kind of ailments in the body. So I think it's very important, first of all, to talk about it, because it's so much stigmatized and it is taking so many lives, either due to suicide or something for that matter. A lot of people die every year, but still people are not talking about it, even in a hospital setup. So that is something that really intrigues me. Okay, why people are not talking about it? Why they are afraid to seek help? Because I have taken help. I wanted help, so I have tried to seek professional help, and a lot of self help techniques have helped me. You should look out for some people who are supportive around you. Like for me, my parents have been very supportive. So yeah, all these combined factors and the personal journey and my exposure to the healthcare field has kind of instilled that drive within me. So probably I'll be pursuing my master's as well in this.
That's really great. It's great that you've turned all these experiences into something positive and now you're advocating for awareness about those things. So I think we can just conclude by having a quick discussion on what do you think are some effective ways that we can get more youth to stand up for things like this and advocate and raise awareness?
Okay, so definitely one thing is like at least one person should stand up first, like then only you can encourage others to do that. I think we have come a long way ahead now. Like in the previous years, I don't think a lot many pages, if you see, a lot many initiatives that have been dedicated. If we, like in the today's world, in the social media world, there are so many pages and initiatives that are dedicated to the cause of making everybody aware about mental health issues. Also, it's very important to be literate in that respect. Like a lot of people don't even know what is mental health, and they don't even, like, they ignore these kind of things, these kind of issues in their day-to-day lives. So it's very important, like, you know, even in the school curriculum, if I have to suggest, I feel like our school curriculum doesn't talk about or doesn't teach us about the mental health and how important it is. If this has been taught like since the very building up years, like when we are children, I think people would be more and more receptive towards it, acceptable towards if something they are facing. Also, the fear of judgment is something that will take a long road ahead, but I feel definitely we have come a long way ahead. So yeah, I want to, like, there should be more people who can just stand up and advocate for this cause, and it will empower more people to just speak up in the long term.
Yeah, definitely. Completely agree with the school curriculum thing, and we have come a long way, that's for sure. So with that, thank you so much, Komal, for your informative presentation. And this will be up on YouTube soon.
Thank you so much for giving me a platform to just uh, express my emotions about it. Thank you so much.
Does anyone have any questions before we wrap up? Dava, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask the question, if that's fine.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. So thank you so much for the amazing presentation, and yeah, I'll just directly jump to the question. So I want to know about basically like the future of like making therapies like on an application and using AIs, like like where do you see the future of that sort, like basically people in the post COVID, like after that it's even there are not that much like therapists around in most of the places I know. So like I mean around the world, and like still it's really say like many people are like not aware, at the same time they can't really afford it. So like what is the future of this AI related, and like making this whole therapeutic session into an application base? I mean in India also right now there are some couple of apps, but again like those app has also a lot of negative like things about privacies and all the stuffs and insurance, but yeah, basically that's it.
Hi. So yeah, it's a great question actually, and this is something that intrigues me too. But again, as I mentioned, I think we have been coming a long way ahead now. I don't think there were apps in past which were dedicated to mindfulness or to seeking help. I think pandemic is something like, if we look at the positive aspect of the pandemic, it has actually given way to the development of a lot of such artificial intelligence based apps and these kind of helplines. If you see, I know it's not still accessible and financial problems is something that has to be dealt with, but again, like it is something that like we have come a long way ahead, and these lot of these apps actually are free to use, if you would have seen, and they will connect you to a lot of therapists all around the globe. Also, if I have to talk about like in India, as you mentioned, I feel the government, maybe they have actually started one helpline called Kiran, where they have connected a lot of therapists from across India, like who are working towards providing mental health support if you reach out to them. But I think there should be more considerable time given to mental health and the curriculum, as I mentioned. Like if it is introduced in the schools itself, if there's a counselor in the schools itself, that is like the building up years, that will give a more positive and more hopeful future ahead. People will not consider it as the stigma, and people will realize that it is completely normal to ask for help. So, and the financial aspect again, like I think the government needs to make some amendments, and they need to realize that like it is very important to give equal attention to the mental health, and it has to be dealt with like separately as a separate entity. So yeah, but I still feel we have come a long way ahead, and there's a long journey ahead as well. So I hope that answers your question to some extent.
Thank you, Komal. Thank you so much. And that's all the time we have for today. So thanks again. And Stuti, just wanted to make sure, do we have your consent to record? I won't stop the recording if so.
Yeah, you do. Thanks.
Okay, sounds good.